Hello friends, in this video tutorial, let us see the concept of SSAS cube proactive caching. So for the purpose of this video tutorial, we will use the same cube that we have developed in our earlier video tutorial. So now let us go to the partitions tab. In partitions tab, we can see that there are 5 partitions, 2 for internet sales and 3 for reseller sales. Now let us go to storage settings. Now if we go to storage settings, then we have already discussed these options in one of our earlier video tutorials. That is, we can change the way the ROLAP cube is updated from the source database by changing the storage setting over here. Now there is one more important thing, that is, we can go to the custom settings. If we go to the custom settings and options, we can see there is something called enable proactive caching. So if we click this particular checkbox, then we will get further options to configure our proactive caching. But now before going into this, let us understand one important thing, that by default MOLAP, there is out of this 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 MOLAP stages, the last one, that is pure MOLAP, okay, the only MOLAP does not support proactive caching. So if you go over here, go to customs, and if you just tick this and click OK and come out, you see it has changed. That is, it is no longer MOLAP now. The bar is no longer on the MOLAP. It has converted itself into automatic MOLAP. Okay. So if we change it over here again and then we go to custom settings, then you can see that enable proactive caching is gone, which means that enable proactive caching option is not available when we are talking about this only MOLAP option, right? Now, having discussed this, now let us discuss other settings. That is, if we are on any other option, then we can configure the proactive caching mode. Now let us say if we are on the scheduled MOLAP option, and if you go to custom settings, then we can see that it gives the default settings for this particular mode, that is scheduled MOLAP mode, what all custom settings are available. So by default, enable proactive caching is there, so it has been enabled. Also update the cache periodically after every 1 day, right? This is the option that has been configured. So let us see is, if suppose we go to schedule MOLAP, then we can see over here, right? It is clearly written that processing is automatically performed after every 24 hours. So this has been configured by this option, that is update the cache periodically after every 1 day. Now if we go to some other option, right, let's say we go to medium latency, then the latency is 4 hours, that is after every 4 hours things will get updated. So we can see over here, drop outdated cache, latency is target is 4 hours. So after every 4 hours the outdated cache will be dropped and new cache will be built up. Okay. Also during this time the silence interval is 10 seconds, which means after the new update is received, SQL server will wait for 10 seconds before processing the cube, and silence override interval is 10 minutes. Now what does this mean? This means that, let's say the base database keeps on receiving new updates before the time period of 10 seconds expires. So every time before the time period of 10 seconds expires, it keeps on receiving new updates. Then by our first logic, that is by waiting for 10 seconds after every update, we may go into an infinite loop, because we may never be able to update our cube with the help of source database if the source database continuously keeps on getting updated. So how to get out of this loop? We can get out of this loop using silence override interval. That is, let's say for continuously 10 minutes the updates are observed, and because of these updates, if we are not able to process the cube because of this 10 seconds interval of silence interval, then what will happen? It will override. So 10 minutes time will override the silence interval. That is, after 10 minutes, even if the updates are happening, our ROLAP cube will get processed from the source database. And this particular setting, that is drop outdated cache, will keep a target latency of 4 hours. That is, after every 4 hours our cache will be dropped and new cache or ROLAP cache will be built up. Now Also, we can see bring online immediately option has been ticked, which means when the cache is being built up for MOLAP, at that time, if any query comes, then that query will be served from the source database. That query will be served by retrieving data from the source database. So only during that time period, that is when the MOLAP cube is being built again, that is the cache is being built again, only at that time, for that time duration, the queries will perform slowly because the data will be retrieved from the source database. That is the meaning of bring online immediately. That is, during the time also when the cache is being built, the SSAS server will not, or the SSAS queue will not remain unresponsive. It will still be serving the query request. But how it will serve? It will query the base database, the source database. Okay. Now let us click cancel over here. Now let us see some more standard settings. Let's say for low latency MOLAP. So the targeted latency is 30 minutes. So let us go to custom settings. So over here we can see that the silence interval and silence override interval settings are same, but drop outdated cache is 30 minutes. So that's the only change. Okay. With respect to the earlier option, this option has got only one change, that is instead of 4 hours it is now 30 minutes. And over here also bring online immediately is tick, which means the queries will be served from the source database when the cache is being rebuilt. Okay. Now let us see automatic MOLAP. So over here, if we go, then we can see that only these two options have been ticked. That is, after every 10 seconds, if let's say if a change has been observed in the source database, then our SSAS server will wait for 10 seconds and see if any new changes are coming or not. So if any new changes are not coming, then after 10 seconds it will process the MOLAP cube. Okay. But if suppose the changes keep on coming, then after 10 minutes it will process the MOLAP cube. Now, so these are some of the options. Now let's go to real-time OLAP. We can see that some of the options have been configured, right? So what happens is silence override interval is not present, right? Because the base data is only the aggregates are served from the OLAP cube, right? But the main data is queried from the base database. Okay. And over here for ROLAP, the base data is always served from the base database table. That is, that's why the bring online immediately is ticked, and outdated cache is dropped after every 0 second, which means the cache is not maintained, which means that both the aggregates as well as data is served from by querying the source database. So we have seen that if we are on any of the options, standard options, pre-configured standard options, we can still go to custom settings, right? And we can change the custom settings. Okay. So these are the options that are available. Now enable, now apply settings to dimension, which means that whatever settings are there, these are for the fact tables, right, or the fact measures, right, measure groups, but same can be applied to the dimensions also. Okay. Now let us cancel, and now let us go to a particular partition. So now right now we have selected a particular partition, and then we are going to the storage settings. Now in this case, if you go to custom settings, then we'll get some additional options. We'll get the options to notify. Okay. So what does notification mean? Notification means whenever some data changes in the base database, then we can track those changes and we will get the notifications for those changes in our SSAS server. So over here we have three options. One is SQL server based notifications, second is client initiated, and third is schedule pooling. Now first SQL server option is available only if the base source database is SQL server. So if the source database is SQL server, then we can click over here, specify tracking tables, and we can go over here and we can specify the tables that we want to track. So if we have specified the tables, then if any changes are happening in these tables, then we will get the notifications, right? Now client initiated means any other third party database or systems which can notify SSAS server. In this option also we can specify the tables that we want to track. And third is schedule polling. In this we need to provide the polling interval, that is after 10 seconds or let's say after 10 minutes it will keep on seeing in the source database whether changes have occurred or not. Now on what basis will it see the changes? It will see based on the polling query. Now this particular query that we specify, okay, it needs to have return a single row column value, that is it needs to return a single cell, and based on the if any changes have happened to the value of the single cell after every 10 subsequent minutes in our example, then it will consider that some changes have occurred in the base database, and then it will process the incremental data. Okay, now processing query is the query based on which it will process. So this query, polling query, is used only to track the changes, whereas what to do if changes are there, then it will use processing query. So whatever data is retrieved from the processing query, that for that data the updations will be applied. So in this video tutorial we have seen the various standard storage settings and how to customize those storage settings using the custom settings options. So the main option that we have seen as part of this is enable proactive caching. So if we enable it, then we get further many options to further configure our storage setting in SSAS OLAP cube. But before ending this video tutorial, let us see one or two some important and interesting things. See, right now automatic MOLAP is selected, right, and we are going to custom settings. Then the default behavior of automatic MOLAP is it will keep on updating the MOLAP cache, and at the time when the MOLAP cache is being rebuilt, if a query comes during that time, during the rebuild process, then automatic MOLAP will use the existing, that is outdated MOLAP cache, that is the rebuild process is parallel in nature. The outdated MOLAP cache is maintained at the time when the updated new MOLAP cache is being rebuilt, and the queries are solved from the outdated MOLAP cache. Hence the performance never degrades. Okay, and after the new updated MOLAP cache has been built up, the old MOLAP cache, that is the outdated MOLAP cache, is discarded, and the queries are then shifted to the new updated MOLAP cache. That is, after the old new cache is built up, the old is discarded and the queries are then solved from the new MOLAP cache. So in the entire process, data is not retrieved from the base or the base database, and hence the queries are always running fast. That is the default behavior of automatic MOLAP. Okay, now if we go to medium MOLAP or lower latency MOLAP, then if we go to custom settings, now observe the default behavior over here. Over here the default behavior changes. In this case, this option has been tick marked, drop outdated cache for the latency of 4 hours. So in this particular medium latency MOLAP or low latency MOLAP, a situation may arise when the data is served from the base database, right, or the source database. Why? Because this option is tick, bring online immediately, means when when drop outdated cache is ticked, that is when the outdated cache is dropped, okay, at that time if a query comes, then the data is retrieved from the source database or the base database. So at that time, during only that time period interval when the rebuild of the new updated cache is going on, at that time the query performance can be slower. Okay, now the interesting thing is you cannot untick this. When latency has been specified, you cannot untick this, right? What it is showing, the latency setting must be disabled when the bring online option is unchecked. So if this is unchecked, okay, then this has to be unchecked, right? But if latency has been specified, then in that case we also need to have this option checked, that is bring online immediately option checked. Why? Because after the outdated cache has been dropped, we need to tell SSAS server that immediately start serving your query request from the base or the source database, and that is the reason why this option is ticked, that is bring online immediately option is ticked. So once the old cache is dropped, then immediately with the help of this option, bring online immediately option, the data is retrieved from the base or source database, and then it is the query is served using that data. So that's why these two options go together, that is either these two options are unchecked or these two options are checked together, right? So once we check this, that message is gone. So, and I hope friends you also understand the reasoning behind this behavior, that is why those two checkboxes are either checked together or unchecked together. The reasoning is, I hope we have understood using this video tutorial. Over here also in low latency MLAP also, the outdated cache is dropped, and at that time when the outdated cache is dropped, at that time before the new cache is built up, what in that time interval whatever request comes, it needs to be served from the base database or the source database, and that's why this option has to be ticked, that is bring online immediately option has to be ticked. Also there is one more option, enable ROLAP aggregations. So if this option is ticked, then the aggregations are maintained in ROLAP format in the relational source database. So in that too in the format of materialized views. So if we tick this option, we have to ensure that the relational source database supports materialized views or index views. Okay. So I hope friends this video tutorial on proactive caching is useful to you. Thank you.